Hey, welcome back to the Epidose of these crazy people that just eat meat and can't stop talking about it. Today, Justin and I are doing another short ribs. Let us know if you like the short ribs. Leave us a comment. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like, blah, 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 all that stuff so we can have a successful channel, keep making videos. And today, we've got a topic that comes up all the time. I can't even tell you, I can't get through a week without fielding a question on this. So, what is this topic?
Yeah, so the topic is gluconeogenesis. What is it? Is it harmful? How does it work? What it do? Yeah, and it's really important to the carnivore community because gluconeogenesis is one of the cornerstones of the carnivore diet. The reason being is that, so yes, glucose is important for many functions in the body. And so oftentimes, if people know that, and you talk about a carnivore diet, which is more or less completely absent of carbohydrates and sugars, people often wonder, but wait, don't you need glucose? Doesn't your body need glucose? And at which point you have to say, yes, the body does need glucose. So then they're like, well, how do I square this circle? And gluconeogenesis is the answer to square that circle. Basically, the gluconeogenesis is the ability for the body to convert protein into sugar.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of ways it can make glucose. So yeah, it can use a glycerol backbone or something like that also to form it. But I think this one goes back to a lot of people coming from keto, and in keto you tend to eat a moderate amount of protein, and one of the reasons why you eat a moderate amount of protein is because you don't want to inspire gluconeogenesis and kick you out of ketosis. So I got nothing bad to say about keto. Personally, it worked for me, but carnivore worked better. And then of course, then we kind of get into carnivore, and there's kind of like, whoa, do you eat high fat or do you eat high protein? And of course, when you say high fat or high protein or moderate or whatever, that's all kind of subjective because those terms mean different things to different people. So it's kind of hard to say, but I eat what most people consider high protein. And back in the day, I was kind of obsessed with numbers, and I was constantly doing glucose and ketone tests to see what would happen and stuff like that. And if you do eat a lot of protein, you might see a little bump in glucose, but of course you do after you eat almost everything, right? So you're going to have an insulin response to every meal. And when you eat high protein, you don't get a big response like you do when you eat carbohydrates. So, and I think everybody's protein demand is different. I mean, I'm a bigger person, and I like lifting weights, and everybody knows that if you want to use your muscles, they're going to break down to a certain amount. You get micro tears or whatever. And then when you're sleeping, your body tends to rebuild those muscles. But there's other actions going on all the time, and eating a lot of protein helps you build big muscles. So um, there's kind of a conflict there because follow any bodybuilders, whether they're vegan or carnivore or omnivore or whatever, they're putting a bunch of protein in one way or the other, whether it's through shakes or eating meat and stuff like that. So if your goal is to always stay in ketosis, good luck, because I don't think that's really how it works. But I think people cycle in and out, and of course you could spend more time in the more time with higher levels of beta hydroxybutyrate, based on your diet. A lot of people when they start carnivore seem to do better on a higher fat diet, but then over time, it seems like a lot of people do better on a little less fat. And that could be because we become more efficient. And a lot of people observe this. So when it comes to gluconeogenesis, your body's going to do it as it needs to. And it seems to be that when you stop eating carbohydrates, gluconeogenesis is driven more by the body's demand for glucose and less because you're eating a lot of protein. So, I mean, what have you noticed, Justin?
Yeah, so I think that's right. And probably everybody does gluconeogenesis if you eat protein. Probably everyone's body does it to some degree. It's just that on the carnivore diet, it's your sole um, way of getting sugar to the brain, to the body, to the parts that need the glucose. And so here's the thing, it is a process. And just like all processes in the body, it comes with some inflammation, some chemical changes and things like that. And so people start to worry, right? People start to worry, oh, if you're doing gluconeogenesis all the time, you need to give, your liver a break or your kidneys a break and things like that for it to, because it's using it to the conversion process. And I just kind of laugh at things like this because people think it's bad that the body is doing a thing that it's designed to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they
And
seem to be focused on it being a stressor
right,
as opposed to just being a normal process, right? Like it's
right,
going to damage you because you're doing, but every time you work out or exert yourself, you're gonna go through some gluconeogenesis to replenish the blood sugar that was consumed, right?
right, exactly. And so it's like the people want the static version of the body, and the body is not a closed system, it's an open system,
Right.
meaning that you're constantly responding to the environment. These lights, right, where our eyes are doing things, our brains are doing things, or different parts of our body that are doing things, responding to the environment. And one of those environmental shifts is eating, and it's causing different changes in the body and depending on what you eat. Now, what we do know is that getting your ATP, your mitochondrial cells energy through the glucose process, through the Krebs cycle, essentially, is like a 7-stage process. Whereas getting your energy, again, this is more from fat, but beta hydroxybutyrate, which is other stuff as well, from the fat, it's like a 2-step process. So that we know is less stressful, because it's more natural. It's more of a, not, I mean, maybe not more natural, maybe is not the right term. It's just, less stages is less inflammation. Now, do we know exactly the stages of gluconeogenesis? Not exactly how it works. Maybe somebody does, but I don't think me or Tom knows the exact step of what happens with the protein. We know something that your body only converts about 30% of it into energy, of whatever
Well,
you're
I
eating.
think, yeah, I think when it comes to when you eat protein, a lot of that protein goes to rebuilding your body because there's all kinds of tissues, even your bones are made out of proteins, right? So um the most of the protein you eat is probably going to the structures of the body and the fluids, right? So you eat some meat, goes into your stomach, starts breaking down, gets in your small intestine, and then the intestinal flora breaks it down into amino acids or amino groups and passes it on to the bloodstream, and it goes out into all these processes. So just because you eat protein, I mean, I eat meat, I eat steak, there's fat in steak too. I eat a little bit leaner steak than most people, but it's not a massive difference, right? So that your body knows what to do with that protein, and most of it's going to be rebuilding. And a lot of us came to carnivore, we had illnesses or whatever. I had arthritis really bad, and I'm sure a lot of what I eat went back into rebuilding my joints, and then I use those joints and those muscles all the time. Justin's out hitting the gym and splashing around in the pool, he's got to rebuild too, right? He lives in a penthouse on top too, so he's got a lot of stairs to climb every time he wants to leave. So there's a protein demand there too. So I think people are on this under the impression that every time we're talking about carbs, fat, and protein, that it's all about fuel. but a lot of protein goes to building the body. And if the body's going to convert protein into energy, a third of it is lost in the production of energy from the protein. So, um, not only are you not going to get as much energy out of it, and your body tends to prioritize. We know that if you're eating carbohydrates, it tends to burn them first because it wants to bring down your blood sugar, right? Because your blood sugar tends to get out of range, gets too high. But if you're eating fat and protein primarily, your body's going to use the fat for fuel first and protein second. And that demand is just in both because it's harder to convert protein into energy, but also because your body wants to use it for so many other things. So I think a lot of people get really spooked about gluconeogenesis, like it's really bad for them or it's going to drive their blood sugar really high. But I don't know anybody, especially if they've been doing this for more than a year or two. I don't know anybody who gets glucose spikes from eating too much protein. Have
Right.
you ever heard
And
of that?
I have not heard about that. And
Yeah.
remember, protein floating around in the body, not so bad. It's really not. You can't really damage your body from protein. You'll get sick of eating your satiety singles. I've done it. I've eaten so much protein that I've gotten nauseous. You eventually get nauseous if you eat too much, that, and or you'll end up with the meat sweats at night or something like that. You'll just become
I've
so thermogenic.
I've gotten the meat sweats at the gym a couple times. I was really hungry, ate a couple steaks and probably not enough fat because I was burning a lot of calories. And then I'm working out, and all of a sudden I'm like, man, I feel really hot. What's going on? And then I'm like, oh, I ate some lean steak before, eat 2 New York strips and then go to the gym. And an hour later, so maybe a little bit longer, you're like, wow, it's hot. Oh, I got the meat sweats. So it can happen, but that's a pretty rare thing, even for somebody like me that's just eating leaner cuts all the time. So,
Yeah, exactly. And so your body will give you signs. Now, even if you have the meat sweats, you're not in any danger, right? I mean, some people, they eat a bunch of protein and they get heart palpitations, but that's again more in the adjusting phase. And we can talk about, minerals and electrolytes on a different video. Um, but you're not going to get glucose spikes. No, eating meat is not stressful on the body. There doesn't really seem to be an upper limit to protein. And we also remember that you have, a whole system that's designed to eliminate excess things, right? Well, what it doesn't need, your body will just, toilet it out. It'll just poop it out. And so, yeah, I don't really have a worry about eating too much protein. Yes, there is rabbit starvation if you do not have any fat and your body fat is like below 5%. Like, to get to rabbit starvation, the conditions have to be kind of right. There's even people that literally eat rabbit that don't get into rabbit starvation, right? And
mhm.
so, although possible, you have to basically have already be starving and have used up most of your fat stores on your body. And
Right.
every pound of fat that you have on your body is 3,000 calories, right,
Or
Tom?
yeah, or a little more. Yeah.
And so, you know it takes quite a bit to get to that level. It could be that in those situations, it is a survival situation. If you're hiking 20 miles a day for a week, that might cause some trouble. But most people's lives are sedentary. People aren't working any more than an hour. um, how much energy do you really need? And most of the stuff is going to rebuilding, like you said. So don't fear the protein. It's really, I essentially call it harmless. Go ahead, eat the protein. Like, I really don't see negative effects from eating protein unless you have some really weird offhand condition or the environment or something's really off.
Yeah, and eating a high protein diet is a good way to get leaner. So, and I look at it as a good way to do sort of a long cut. So you eat a high protein meals, in my case, lots of lean steak, and you can sustain that for a long time because it's very satisfying, and it provides you with everything you need. But it also allows you to spend some time tapping into your fat stores. without really any discomfort. I mean, really if you wanted to say that in order to lose weight, you need to eat in a deficit, to some extent that's true. But if you're supplying all the protein you need, which you can pencil out depending on who you listen to, it might vary a little bit. But if you want to use your fat stores and build muscle, you may not actually lose any weight, but you will notice changes in your physique for sure. And that's kind of the holy grail. Can I still build strength? Or if you're a bodybuilder, can I still build muscle mass um and get leaner without, for some people they need to do it for long periods of time. They've been packing it on for decades, and then they want to take it off. And of course, everybody would like to wake up the next morning being in the what they consider the perfect fat to muscle ratio, or perfect composition. But really doing it over time makes sense, unless a lot of people are getting ready for competitions or whatever, so they have a deadline, so they take more drastic measures, and that's very common in bodybuilding, uh sports competitions, and on and on and on. That does happen a lot. But just to be clear, gluconeogenesis is the body synthesizing blood sugar, typically from proteins or glycerol or something like that. And it does happen. It's going to happen. You do have certain parts of your body, certain cells that require glucose, and so your body's going to make what it needs. It's basically going to be regulated by your liver for the most part. And that's my take on it, is like, let your liver regulate that rather than eating a bunch of carbs and spiking your blood sugar all the time, because the increased glucose from gluconeogenesis is very mild, and I think it's well regulated, especially by people that are already sort of adapted and used to the diet.
I think it's Thomas Sowell, but that always says, when you're presented with well, this is really bad, or that's really bad, or this is horrible, compared to what, right? And
Right.
so when our choices are fat, protein, carbohydrates, oh, gluconeogenesis is bad compared to what, right?
Right. Yeah. And it's like we get into this whole thing of stressors, what's actually a stressor and what's just a natural process, and so on and so forth. So, it's like eating certain vegetables, that have toxic stuff in them. It's like, oh, well, that forces the body to create compounds which might kill cancer cells. And, like Sean always says, well, if that's the case, why don't I have a sip of gasoline every day? So, it's entirely different to bring in compounds that stress the body, toxic compounds that stress the body, versus the body just going through its normal processes. It's like, I don't agree with everybody's approach to keto, but it's clear that the human body can cycle through states of ketosis. And really the only reason why we talk about ketosis or ketones is because ketones are easy to measure, right? They're actually a minority fuel source. They're a tiny, 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 tiny piece of the fuel system, right? I mean, when you're in a state of ketosis, you're actually burning mostly fatty acid chains that you can't measure with a finger stick, right? Or maybe you can in a laboratory or something, but it's not as easy as measuring beta hydroxybutyrate and glucose typically. So that's really why we talk about it so much. It's not that it's the glimpse of what's going on. It's the flipping. It's like, because I think it's something like when you're producing ketones, your ketone levels are high, then you're not making insulin, right? Insulin's not being released at that time. But anytime you eat, you're going to release some insulin anyway. So there's going to, even though your beta hydroxybutyrate levels or BHB levels or ketone levels are high, doesn't mean you're necessarily making them at that point anyways. It could just be circulating around in your blood. Just be really active and you'll burn off those ketones. Be sedentary and they're just going to keep circulating for a while, right? So it isn't all about your diet or when you eat. And I think the whole thing about being afraid of gluconeogenesis is way overblown. So unless you are a diabetic, or a severe alcoholic or something like that, your pancreas are damaged, your body's going to regulate those things tightly. So, for the general population, it's just a normal process, right?
Exactly. Don't medicate normal. Don't worry about normal.
Yeah.
Yes, when you eat, mTOR goes up.
Hmm.
Ooh, scary,
Yeah.
right? It has a
Right.
scary name and all that. Yes, you do get an inflammatory and a release response when you eat anything, you know,
Well,
because your body's reacting.
this is
Okay.
anecdotal, of course, because I'm just talking about myself. But if I eat a bunch of lean steak every day, and I'm getting some gluconeogenesis, maybe a little more than somebody who's strict keto and very high fat, my A1C values don't go up. So that means there's not enough glucose in my bloodstream to be damaging the red blood cells, right? So right there, there's some measurable evidence, right? And then I can also tell you, I do a lot better working out on carnivore and eating lean than I do eating high fat or eating keto, right? And there's plenty of people out there working out during doing keto that are doing fine, but those people also tend to take a lot of supplements and stuff like that. Certainly not everybody, but the real competitive people do, right? That's, if you're looking at some shredded CrossFitter that's just tearing it up all the time, or, I'm in a couple of keto bodybuilding groups because I really like strength training. I'm in a bunch of groups, but anyways, it works for some people. And, I'm not saying you have to be carnivore or you can't be keto or whatever, but I think we all bring that baggage. It's just like drinking coffee or wine or whatever. We all did those things before, so we were keto before, we were paleo before, or whatever it was, we were vegan before. We're going to bring some of that with us, right? And I think the gluconeogenesis fear, a lot of that really just comes out of the keto crowd, and I think a lot of it was just kind of overstated.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Well, I think we tied this one up. We've shot this one up. We've chewed on this meat. We've had the short ribs. There you go.
There you go.
Love it.
This we're licking the bone on this short rib. Whatever you do, don't send this video over to the meat police either. She'll be upset.
Yeah, we're slowly wasting away. We're eating our own collagen in our bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunate. Because we all know there's no collagen in a strip loin. All right. Well, we appreciate you guys watching. Leave us your comments. Let us know what your input is on gluconeogenesis, or fat versus lean, or high protein, or how many carbs you're sneaking in to enhance your performance, or whatever it is, because it's all good. It's all good. We're all under one big tent, one big low carb tent. We're all friendly here, even with the meat police. And so anyways, until next time.
We just worry about her when he starts cooking pigeons. That worries us a little bit.
I was like, wow. Yeah, I didn't expect to see that, but hey, there's plenty of damn pigeons out there, and they are mostly a nuisance. So go for it. Eat one for me. Until next time, drink your collagen peptides, and pass this video on to everybody on the entire planet except the meat police. And maybe I don't know who else should we not tell.
Dr. Joel Kahn.
Dr. Joel Kahn, don't send it to him either. So I don't want him breaking another foot when he's throwing a temper tantrum. So anyways, until next time, hey, eat some meat, feel better. Whatever you do,
don't fall down the carb hole.